Welcome everyone to the Sponsor CX webinar, Turning Your Data into Revenue Driving Partnerships. I'm your host, Jim Andrews, and I'm really thrilled to introduce our guest for today's session. His name is Wahaj Tariq, Senior Director of Integrated Marketing and Insights for the New York Islanders. Wahaj, great to see you. Welcome, glad to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Yeah. Now, typically, I do a little bit of an introduction and kind of go through the bio, but I thought I'd rather have you do that, Wahaj, because when I look at your background and I compare it to mine, even though I got into this business way well before you did, but I think a lot of us in sponsorship and partnerships, in particular, we arrived at our current positions almost by accident. Some of us, we took very different paths. If we asked everybody who was with us today, what was your path to your current job? There'd be a lot of variation on that road. But with you, you've really been very focused on a sports business career since your undergraduate days in college. So I'd love to have you just tell us a little bit about your career path.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you sort of put it. I think everybody has a different career path. It's not linear. It's typically non-traditional. And for me, I like to put myself in that boat too, where it wasn't linear, it was non-traditional. My pursuit to wanting to work in sports started before my undergrad days. I would say it started in the 90s growing up here in Chicago, seeing Pippen, Rodman, Jordan. It was the Bulls dynasty. The Chicago Bulls were Chicago, and I wanted to be a professional basketball player, but reality set in high school very quickly, and instead I learned about sports marketing at a very early age in high school. I took an elective, and understanding that there's a business side to this, and it's not just all about performance, really helped me identify where I wanted to go to school and what I wanted to pursue in college. So fast forward, I attended DePaul University in Chicago. And during the final 2 years at DePaul, I tried to intern and volunteer with most of the pro teams here in Chicago. And I even worked at the RSN here at the time, Chicago Sports Network. Right. And so just having pursued that and trying all these different areas of working in service, game day, marketing, you name it, that led me to the NFL. I worked at the NFL for 2 years as a member of their junior rotational program. Got to learn a lot from the NFL. That network that I created, I still hold very close to my chest today. And some of the people that I call as mentors, my former bosses over there. And so from the NFL, I went to the Raiders to join a newly formed group called Revenue Planning and Analytics, which allowed me to touch almost every part of the business, from ticketing, from partnerships, to digital, to retail, and got to open up Allegiant Stadium in 2021, and then moved on to join the Detroit Pistons and join their marketing and BI group at the Detroit Pistons. After one season with the Detroit Pistons, I was recruited to the New York Islanders, where I am now today, in their strategy and analytics group to oversee performance marketing and insights. So non-linear, very non-traditional, but it was all rooted around the background of getting my hands dirty with data and being able to serve as a conduit to all the other revenue driving verticals in each organization to make sense of what is the data telling us and how do we activate it for your specific vertical and drive bottom line.
Right, and that's obviously what we're here to talk about today. So, talking about your current role with the Islanders and how you and the folks that are in your unit there, how you intersect with the partnership team. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And you actually outlined, and we have some slides here to help us kind of follow along, and just kind of walk us through those, and then we'll talk about each one in greater detail.
Yeah, for sure. So as I was mentioning in my intro, I was recruited to the Islanders to primarily help modernize its business operations and support our newly built state-of-the-art UBS arena at the time. And one of those areas was to create a partnership strategy function. Now, in this day and age where we are, there's no shortage of data these days. But the question we all always ask is, how do you harness the data that you have to support and guide a key revenue arm like partnerships in the organization? Or how do you position your brand in front of prospective brands in a crowded media market? What brands should we even target and why? These are the questions that partnerships was asking of the strategy and analytics group to help provide sort of a guiding stick. And so with all these questions, the ethos of the partnership strategy group that we started was very simple. Serve as an extension of the corporate partnerships team and aid the team by developing impactful, data driven go to market strategies, measuring a client's media performance, and help uncover new opportunities. So, those are the three buckets that you see in here. Primarily, bucket number one, I want to spend a couple minutes on this, Jim, because I think it's really important for the audience to really understand and dig in. Who are your fans? We have access to various nationally syndicated sources that give us an idea, right, from a demographic standpoint and even from a psychographic standpoint of who your fans are in your DMA. But what I really want the audience to take away from this conversation today is, do you have understanding of who is in your database, your first party data that you own? Outside of demographics, are you able to tell the story to partners around their behaviors? Are you able to convey to your partners and prospects the the propensities and behaviors of your first party data? We all have a member base. We all have attendees coming. We all have an email database. Those are all various segments to market and educate partners on who they are and for them to essentially rent out and run digital media against. And so that was something that was really missing here at the Islanders that my group and I really wanted to bring to the forefront, internally, but also externally when we're talking to partners.
Makes sense. Oops. I'm sorry. Wahaj, did you want to go through the other ones really quickly, and then we'll go back to?
Yeah. So for the other bucket, performance measurement, really what we're trying to do here is track, measure, and optimize against partner objectives and KPIs. And so there are various vendors and tools out there that you can work with to help with this initiative. And really it's testing the vendors to ensure that they really are uncovering every possible opportunity for value and uncovering that for you. And then cross-functional alignment, we'll get that into a little bit later, but really helping bridge the gap across the organization to ensure that what we're creating and what we're putting out into market is authentic. It's truly integrated, and that everybody is in sync and rowing in the same direction. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but those are the three buckets that I want to share with the audience here to really think about and consider as you're looking to build out this function in your organization.
Awesome. So as you mentioned, with consumer insights, market research, we're talking about mostly prospecting and targeting of partners, as you said, but also I see on their valuation. Is that correct? How do you factor that into this particular area?
Yeah, 100%. So as part of the sales process, when you're helping craft the narrative behind the why, we're also working on the how, right? The asset mix, and then the what, which is the value here at the end. So, for example, as part of crafting the why and the what, our data could show that our fans could tend to have a higher propensity based on a behavioral or psychographic data compared to other teams. And having that knowledge allows you then to go back to looking at your asset mix and potentially tweak what you have as a rate card rate and potentially amplify it uh, based off of who you're talking to and what the objectives are. So, a good example of this in working principle is, let's say you uncover that your fans or your audience might be an audience that is very highly engaged with video engagement. And if your organization is towards the top in terms of, let's call it, league rankings for video engagement, you can take that data point, use it to recalibrate assets around video, for example, that you might have that you're pitching, and be able to surface to the brand that, compared to the league and the teams that you might be talking to or that are in our backyard, we know that our audience ranks higher in video engagement compared to these other teams. And so having that data point to showcase to them adds a little bit more perspective and color behind potentially the package rate or the asset rate that you're going into market. So valuation is an important piece of this puzzle here, where data is influencing what you should be charging and making sure that you're ultimately not underselling yourself and potentially undercutting some revenue.
No, I think it's an excellent point, and it also kind of reinforces something that I still see some properties and rights holders do. They set a value for a package without considering who might be the buyer. Yeah. And I think some people are a little uncomfortable sometimes who are selling partnerships and saying, oh, well, this package of assets and benefits could actually be worth more to somebody in one category than it is in another. It sounds maybe like that's unfair, but as you say, no, and especially when you have the data to back it up, it's like, no, this is going to be worth more to brand A because they have it's just a more targeted opportunity or whatever it is. So I love having the data to help tell that story and give that kind of rationale.
Yeah, and the one final piece that I'll add to that, Jim, is when you're in these conversations with your sales team, comfortable too, knowing that, oh, okay, like I have this in my back pocket as I'm having this conversation with the prospect or with the brand for them to leverage and use. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense. Just let me ask a quick question, Wahaj, about kind of the process, and not trying to pull back the curtain too much on the way you guys work there at the Islanders, but I'm just curious, is this something where, I mean, it sounds like there's kind of constant interaction, right? Is it are you sitting down with the partnership team kind of regularly to say, okay, what's going on, where could we help, or is it kind of are you getting like inbound, hey, we've got somebody we're talking to, we'd love to have a little bit more data to help us craft the pitch or the proposal or something like that? Just how does that work in general?
Yeah, I think it varies by asset, right? Some of the more static assets, the physical assets, they're sort of you're looking at that maybe on an annual basis after the season is over, right? To sort of recalibrate based off of audience, attendance, and stuff like that. The digital is where I think you see a little bit more frequency. So for us in particular, our partnership sales and partnership solutions team will come to us asking about a particular digital asset that we have beyond just email, right, and SMS, but looking at our app, for example, or if there's different components within on the website that we can unlock and uncover, and being able to share with them more on a weekly or monthly basis, some real-time adjustments of like, hey, given where we are in the season right now, we could look to amplify, we could look to enhance our rate card a little bit here going into the end of the season, or if we're talking about playoffs, right? So there's like little tweaks here and there. So it's definitely an ongoing process. I think for as a best practice, if you have some sort of weekly meeting in place, that's a sort of a cross-functional meeting between partnerships, between marketing, between strategy and analytics. Just having that is a good best practice. That's something that we have here at the Islanders, where we meet weekly, the three groups, to discuss sort of partnerships, where they are right now in their pipeline, what's upcoming, and then from a partnership management as well too, just understanding what partners are asking about, or if something's come up, and just being able to have that discussion in real time on a weekly basis.
Great. Before we move on, I want to mention a couple of things for our audience. Number one is, if any of you have questions, we definitely want to hear from you and have you ask your questions. There is the Q&A tab. We've got a couple of different tabs there. But if you can use the Q&A tab and type in those questions, and I'll monitoring that. Might take some on the fly, might save some until we've gone through the slides here, but please feel free. We'd really love to have your questions for Wahaj. And one thing that I'm anticipating, Wahaj, is because and I hear you talking about, well, when we know this about our audience, when we have this piece of information, we know that they're consumers of video content. It's kind of, and I'll save this until we've gone through a few more of your slides here, but I'm sure people are starting to put in their minds, like, okay, well, where are you getting this? How are you getting that data? It's not just kind of pulled out of the air. It's coming from a number of different sources. So we will definitely talk about that in a bit. But before we leave this, the Consumer Insights and Market Research page, I'm just wondering, Wahaj, do you have kind of a favorite example of a time when audience insights made a real impact on a partnership sale?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to go back to what we were talking about on the previous slide, where I just sort of had that little monologue with the audience about really digging deep into your first party data. So one of my favorite examples is from my first season with the Islanders. There was an RFP that was out from a brand in the oil and gas category to a select few NHL teams. And so our sales team approached my team asking for help to craft the narrative and what the asset mix could be based off of the RFP. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to position the Islanders as the brand from the bunch that will deliver immediate ROI against their objectives. And how are we going to do this? It goes back to, again, my monologue for the previous slide. We wanted to dig deep and showcase not only the size of our database, but showcase the prospect. Who are the key segments that we would want to bring to the mix? And those segments were dictated by us understanding their behavior and propensities compared to those other teams that were in the RFP mix, and that these segments are marketable. We can email them. We can run paid media against them to show real ROI back to the brand. So I want that to sink in a little bit for the audience. We weren't communicating or citing syndicated data. We were highlighting our database. We were serving the brand a silver platter of, here are the segments that have visited C-stores. Here's their average spend that we were able to uncover. Here's their propensity to enroll into loyalty programs, because that's a big thing, right? With in the oil and gas category, they all have their own loyalty programs.
Right.
And we won the RFP and began activating that partnership. And a few months into that partnership, Jim, I kid you not, the brand shared with our partnership management team that they saw a year-over-year increase in their loyalty program enrollment in the Long Island area. So, digging deep into who your database is, who are the key segments, bringing that to the fold, and being able to track how you're activating, it goes a long way. And that sort of set the stage in my first year for the partnerships team to lean in on the fact of, like, we have this data. We need to leverage this as an asset a little bit more and marketing against it from a data-driven approach.
Yeah, that's a great story. You had not shared that with me previously, and I'm just listening to that, and especially with the results that the sponsor reported back. And it's just a perfect example of what data can do. I mean, it really it it may be an obvious statement, but when you can show it that clearly to a
Mhm.
prospect, I mean, how much easier is that making the salesperson's job? It's just kind of like how it, the best thing you can ever say is like you're making it very difficult for somebody to say no to the pitch, right? And that's
Yeah.
it's usually pretty easy. A lot of people can come up with a lot of objections, a lot of reasons not to do stuff, and that's other examples that I've seen. It's data that is the one thing that's kind of like, yeah, you can't refute that, and it's going to be hard for us to say no when we see what the possibilities are here through that data. So that's a great example.
Yeah, I mean, and the brand on the other side, they respect it too. They realize like, okay, you're really digging deep
Right.
into their business. You have their best interest, and ultimately, if you can make the brand look good in front of their board, then that helps us, the organization, that helps the partnerships team to retain and grow it. So it's a waterfall effect, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, to me that's why data is so critical, especially for, and I look briefly at who we have joining us today, and a lot of organizations that are don't have the the numbers that a pro sports team has. So they're not going to be out there pitching sponsors on reach and exposure. They're not going to be able to give them, the kind of eyeballs that a team like the Islanders or somebody else would. But data can really make the difference there, because now when we're talking to cultural organizations and festival producers and small minor league clubs or whatever it might be, we can't play the quantity game, right? We have to play the quality game.
Yeah.
And that's data is what proves the quality. Again, to back to that example that you just shared, it's like when you can prove that your audience, again, take the numbers out of it and just talk about what they do, and that you can prove the behavior that they're going to take, the purchase intent that they have, whatever that is, then you're leveling the playing field, right? Then you are speaking the language of brands, and really, again, back to making it hard for them to say no. So play the data game, not the numbers game, is what I always advise kind of
Mhm.
smaller properties. If we move on to performance and measurement, obviously there's a lot going on here. You've got a lot of information on this slide. What are how's the key sources of data, both external and internal, that are most important when we talk about performance measurement?
Yeah. So when it comes to performance measurement, what I'll share with the audience is that it's important to leave no stone unturned. You really want to help the partnerships team uncover every possible piece of value that's out there for them to share with the client. And so let's start from an internal perspective. From an internal perspective, and I think this was something that you were asking about or alluding to from the previous slide, is really dig deep into understanding what's taking place on your own platforms. And what I mean by your own platforms, I mean, your database, your web, your website, your app, if you have one. From a team perspective, what's happening on your state in your stadium or your arena or around it, the parking lot adjacent to your campus, just making sure that you're uncovering every potential opportunity from that internal perspective. From an external perspective, it's really uncovering three buckets: what's taking place on social, what's happening on TV, and what's happening on radio, and then most importantly, I believe, digital. And what I mean by digital is the World Wide Web. You want to be able to understand where your brand is showing up from an image standpoint, right? Like highlights and like photography, but also mentions. For us at the Islanders, and even when I was at the Raiders, making sure that we're tracking every mention possible of our naming rights partner. It's they're paying a pretty penny for that, right? So we want to make sure that we're uncovering every possible opportunity across the digital ecosystem, not just from an image standpoint, but from a mention standpoint, where UBS Arena shows up or Allegiant Stadium showed up. So how do we do this? There's vendors out there, and as you're going through the process of choosing what vendors you want to work with, my 2 cents to the audience is stress test that vendor or those vendors in an RFP to ensure that you're able to compare and make sure and see that each vendor is picking up as much as possible, from a logo detection standpoint as well from a mention standpoint and accuracy. So that's my 2 cents or sort of feedback for the audience here to keep in mind when they are assessing or trying to figure out which vendor they want to work with, from an external measurement standpoint.
Yeah. What would, just really quickly, we don't have to talk about the details of who they are, but I'm just curious, like how many kind of those external vendors would a team like the Islanders work with? Is it you have one that's providing you a lot of information, or is it multiple?
Yeah, I think it varies. I think it varies for every organization. There's vendors out there that will sort of pitch that they're the one-stop shop, and maybe they can be the one-stop shop where they're tracking everything for you. Or maybe you need to sort of dissect it up a little bit, and you've got somebody who's doing social and digital measurement for you, and then you've got somebody who's doing the TV and radio measurement. I've come across teams in my past life that have a vendor for each thing. They have a social vendor, they have a TV and radio vendor, and then they have a digital vendor. So it's a matter of, what budget you're working with. And again, as you go through your own version of comparing the vendors that are out there, what is your criteria that you've sort of set up and who's hitting your criteria at the end of the day?
Gotcha. I'm just curious on this slide when we talk about the partner impact study. And looking at the details that you've got there, I think many properties might feel that, okay, when we talk about things like tracking brand lift and consideration, all of those things, that's really the responsibility, they might think, of the brand partner. But it appears that, and you mentioned this with Allegiant and naming rights sponsors, you're doing some of the tracking yourselves of the mention and not leaving it strictly up to the brand, the partner, to do that. Is that really what you're doing here? You could tell us a little bit more about how you do that, because I would think some of that is information that might be difficult to get from an out if you're not on the brand side.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, ultimately brands are spending big money with the properties, and each year I feel like brands want to understand and measure ROI a little bit more better and more sophisticated. And so it's our job to support and arm the brand with reasons for why they should continue their investment with us. And so as important as all the quantitative earned media measurement is, it's equally important to round that data out with qualitative measurement, which is where the partner impact study comes to play. It helps the brand understand and see that we as the property rights are delivering against our promise to help them achieve their objectives and help separate themselves from their competition. So you're right. Some teams might take this on internally and run their own survey against their own database and measure some of that asset recall and lift. And some work with a vendor. Personally, I like to work with a vendor to keep it unbiased and provide the brand an opportunity to understand the results from the vendor themselves, right? So invite the vendor to that meeting where we're going through the results, and now you're sort of eliminating that it's biased from the property. It's actually not. It's here's the expert that ran the survey, that ran all the measurement, and you have you basically have full advantage of asking whatever you would like. And what I like about another thing that I like about working with a vendor is they're working with other clients as well too. So now they've created essentially a library, they have benchmarking available. And so if you've got, for us in particular, what I like to do, I like to go to the vendor and ask, hey, how does this measure against your other NHL clients? So you're adding another layer of context to really round out what we measured, what we're showing, but now we're able to compare that against peers. And that's very powerful for the brand to take back to their board or to their senior leadership to showcase basically every possible avenue of why this partnership is working and why we need to continue to maintain it.
Yeah, and so many good things there. And then that last piece, I think, is so important too. That context for this data is critical, right? You can't just share a bunch of raw numbers, or you can, but I'm not sure how effective that is. But yeah, putting that in context and saying this is how our peers have done is really great. And I'm personally really glad to see more properties, like the Islanders, who are stepping up and doing that on behalf of their partners. Because as you say, they are paying significant sums, and there's that expectation of some assistance from their property partners. I see that when we do surveys and ask sponsorship decision makers, what is one thing that you really would like more from your property partners? It is that help in measurement, right? And again, not saying that every property, again, if we talk about smaller properties, local properties, they may not have the ability and the budget to go out and do as much as an NHL club or an NFL team could do, but at least doing some of that and making an effort to demonstrate we want to be a good partner, we want to help you measure, we have collected the data that we are able to within our resources. I think it goes a long way when we're talking about renewals and things like that. And speaking of that, Wahaj, I would just ask, like similar to our first slide with the market insights, do you have an example from a time when you're providing good data to assess performance made a difference in a partner maybe renewing or expanding, or even if not that, kind of pivoting to make a change to do something better in the next term?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple examples that come to mind, but the one that I'll share for here is, as part of our partner impact study, working with the third party that we do, we were measuring asset recall, but we were also measuring some key objectives for the particular partnerships. And so our partner impact study is conducted in two waves. We have one in the early part of the season, and then we'll do one towards the later part of the season, closer to the end. And so for one particular partner, after we went through the results of our first wave, we uncovered specifically low recall and benefit utility of a key partnership asset. And our partnership management team worked with us to figure out, like, all right, what could be sort of opportunities for us to enhance this, and then we'll put it in the market, and then we'll remeasure it again, right, in the second wave. And so they went back with some recommendations to the partner. And when it came to the second wave readout, we were able to showcase higher recall of that asset. And then we asked our partner, this is what the data is showing us. Are you able to sort of add context from your standpoint? And then they were able to come back to us and verify that, yeah, in particular, the asset that we wanted to enhance a little bit, and the benefit that we were trying to promote through leveraging that asset, the partner was able to observe higher utility of that benefit that they were trying to promote a little bit more to our audience. So it's an example of where we're marrying the quantitative data along with the qualitative, right? And again, it completes the picture for the partner's performance, and the partner values that, and they appreciate that because it makes their life easier.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Now, This last slide was really intriguing to me. From my perspective, it's not one that came immediately or comes immediately to mind when I think about data and analytics and partnerships, and that this idea of cross-functional integration or alignment. So I'd love to hear how you and the Islanders approach this, and you've got these three areas here to talk about.
Yeah. So these three areas are sort of talk at a high level, showcase where the cross functional alignment can come into play, right? And so when I started at the Islanders, this didn't really exist, and that's what the idea behind partnership strategy was to help forge this and create this. And so it's pretty common, I would say, Jim, where across sports and entertainment, you'll come across individuals where we sort of share feedback and we'll ask, hey, when do you learn about assets that were part of a proposal, or is your group involved in the sales process? These are common questions that are still asked today. And so when I started here at the Islanders, my team sort of served as that conduit to the rest of the organization to ensure that we were crafting authentic and integrated proposals. Sitting in the strategy and analytics group offered us the ability to vet, vendors that we might use for fan engagement or for digital marketing. And we were able to bring that to the table in these conversations to partnerships so that maybe there's an opportunity for us to monetize if we use this tool. And I would say over the past few years, there's been a growing trend of a group being formed called partnership solutions within organizations. We now have one. So from a strategy and analytics standpoint, we've taken a little bit of a back seat as it relates to this cross-functional alignment, and a partnership solutions group has stepped in where they are really focused on the proposal development, the creative process, and working with marketing, working with ticketing, working with strategy and analytics, bringing us all together and holding those weekly syncs to make sure that we're all aligned and that we have an idea of what's coming down the pipeline. And so now that we have this group at the Islanders, it's really helped us take our game to the next level and, be a little bit more proactive, be a little bit more upfront on the partnership side with prospective brands, and truly just make sure that our narrative, our insights, our opportunities are all in sync, and that we're really thinking about everybody that's involved from arena and to the broader campus. So my thought around here for the audience is to create sort of create this group that can exist and really help bridge the gap across all the different departments cross functionally.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, if there's one thing that I've seen as kind of the biggest impediment to partnership growth, revenue growth, it's silos, whether that's people being siloed or data being siloed, and it's not always easy to do. I think we understand that. There's a lot of history in the way organizations have grown up and become structured, and it's very easy for an outsider to say, well, yeah, just tear down those theoretical walls and start working cross functionally. But it is important that you do that, right? Because again, you outlined it here very well, like what that can achieve and how it can just make those conversations, whether it's with a prospect, whether it's with a current partner, just so much easier when everyone kind of is working from this, singing from the same song sheet or working from the same data information, and you're not always having to go back and say, well, now you have a conversation with a prospect or a partner. Well, now let me go and talk to ticketing and find out what we can do or what they have, and blah, blah, blah. It's much more seamless, much more integrated, and makes it easier for them to say, yes, this is a partner I want to work with or do more with or something like that.
Yeah, if you can convey to the partner, to the brand, that you have your ducks in a row, that just sort of automatically is going to set you apart from the competition.
So, and I think that's that great thing to lead into one of my last few questions here before you turn it over and we look at some of the questions from the audience. You know, the challenge for a topic like this and a webinar like this is everybody's coming to this with there are different stages of their organization's data journey, right? Some people might be near the beginning of that, and so I'm wondering for them, what advice would you have if because this is obviously something that happens a lot. You have to prioritize, right? It was like, if I don't have unlimited resources here to maybe do everything I know that I could do in terms of gathering and analyzing and sharing data. But again, if we're trying to prioritize, where should I start or what should I really focus my efforts on? What advice would you have for other folks in partnership roles?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think sort of the common theme that's been relevant throughout this conversation that I've sort of echoed on is prioritizing your database. You know, we all have some sort of database in our organization, depending on where you fall in the spectrum. If you've got ticketing data, or if you just have like an email list, right? Get an understanding of the size of your database, the basic demographics that show up for your database, and then if you can and have access to it, layer in some of that engagement and behavioral data on top of it. And if you don't, then there's a lot of simple survey products out there, or form products, where you can begin to collect some of that behavioral data. And what do I mean by behavioral data? Simple polls or surveys that ask your database of what brands they're using, or what are they in the market for, and that you start to collect that routinely. Now you've got some ammo behind you of like, one, who they are, but number two, my database is in market for your product potentially. And so if you can do this yourself, great. Otherwise, if you've got the budget, partner with vendors that can help you rapidly scale your understanding of your database and your general fan base. And then, once you've got that understanding, become a partner with your partnerships team by embedding yourself in their weekly sales meetings to understand their priorities, and so you can support them. At the end of the day, a common, sort of theme that we all sort of live by and talk about in the sports and entertainment world is it takes a village. And we all want to strive for partners that we can partner with cross-functionally in our organization to steer the boat in the right direction. So, I mean, that's the advice that I would give if I were starting from scratch, or if I'm just starting this journey today.
Great, thank you. Okay, of course, can't have a conversation about data and analytics. It can barely have a conversation about anything these days without talking about everybody's favorite topic, and that's AI. What are you seeing in relation to AI and your role and what you're doing there?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking broadly from the sense of talking to peers and people in the industry, I think everyone is exploring and trying to figure it out. What can it do, and how can it help me? I think the biggest takeaway is embrace this change. And if you don't embrace this new technology, this new tool, you will be left behind. And for us at our organization, the way that we're approaching AI is we're trying to be very methodical about it. And a few of us have access to it. We are looking to roll out a steering committee internally and have a few folks cross-functionally as part of that steering committee to make sure that we are rolling out this in a responsible and secure way that's going to drive efficiency. So right now, I think the biggest thing is it's all about efficiency. How can AI help drive efficiency in some of the labor intensive tasks that we have. From a partnership standpoint, we're exploring it from a prospecting standpoint and doing faster analysis. So on my team specifically, we're formalizing a couple of prototype AI agents that we've built internally to help us save time around prospecting. So can this agent assess our open categories, our fan affinities, and then go and conduct some deep research against those open categories and our owners, executives, and our current partners, and who they're connected with, and try to find some of those synergies and be able to prioritize for us. All right, here are the targets, here's who you should be talking to, and here's how your fan data aligns with it, and do it all in a nice, succinct, clean one sheet that you can just hand off to partnerships executive for them to go and run with. This is something that would take a week, at
Right.
most for my senior analyst, but now it can be potentially done within 30 to with the help of this agent.
Yeah.
And for him to be, that allows then him to focus on the bigger, more critical thinking projects, right? And not be stuck in this labor intensive project for the partnerships team. So those are the efficiencies that we're trying to uncover, and we hope to uncover with our steering committee to roll out then some more mass adoption. But efficiency right now, and I think that efficiency will eventually lead to ROI, because that'll be ultimately what everything is measured against.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we could spend a whole 45 minutes to an hour talking about AI and its potential, and we've done that in previous webinars. Yeah, so much to unpack there. But that's it's exciting. It's maybe a little nerve-wracking for some who are like, wow, what is that going to mean for us in some of the roles we have? But as you say, hopefully it's not being used to replace. It's being able to create opportunities for people to do the more strategic and creative parts of their jobs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Haj, I always wrap up, and again, we'll get to the audience questions right after this, but I always wrap up with something I call myth to bust or fact to trust, where I give our guests a statement and have them respond, basically tell me true or false, or maybe somewhere in the middle. And the one, I hear a lot of professional sports organizations claim to be, we are a truly data-driven organization. And is that, again, is that myth or fact that professional sports teams and leagues have become truly data-driven?
Yeah, I would say in the middle, right? I think there are a bunch of teams that are well advanced, and you sort of pick their brains to figure out how did they get set up that way and what were some of those recipes for success. And then there are some other teams that you talk to that are trying to get to the middle, and that's a unique set of circumstances from throughout the organization that are affecting that, right? So every organization in their sort of on the spectrum are in different spots. But I think 10 years ago, where we were to now, yes, there's a lot more that we have access to. There's a lot more that we can use to become data driven. And I think moving forward, depending on, philosophically how your organization is and the adoption that you bring in from an AI perspective will even make that faster of a process for some of these teams. So I would say in general, teams are pretty much all over the place, but majority would be right there in the middle, where they are leveraged to the extent that they can and the capabilities that they have internally, and really getting that top-down approach, top-down sort of buy-in of wanting to grow towards being more data-driven.
Great. Thanks, Wahaj. We've got a question here, and really interesting one from an organization that is having a lot of conversations with marketers who have shifted a lot of their marketing spend to digital due to attribution and measurable ROI. I'm not I'm sure they are not the only organization that is having those kinds of conversations. So in particular, this organization operates casinos, hotels, and travel stops, generating 600,000 monthly visits, 30,000 on-premise screens, and strong first-party guest data. So good on you for having all of that. But they're asking, Wahaj, from your perspective, how would you position like a venue network with a first-party audience so that digital-first brands would see it as part of a performance marketing strategy rather than traditional sponsorship?
So how would you position the network in terms of a marketing function versus a partnership function, right? So
Yeah, I guess should you maybe position it more as that than a partnership?
Yeah, I think so. Going back, so if I'm from my perspective, if I was to like buy media, for example, things that I'm trying to understand is what the reach is, and based off of what the reach is, being able to understand within a DMA or within a geographic location what's possible, right? And sort of who's interacting with that, and understanding more the dwell time, how long are people engaging with this, and what are the capabilities of engaging and then following up. So from a marketing perspective, I think that's what you want to think about is the full customer life cycle. How can I position these boards not to just be from an awareness grabber, but an acquisition, so a nurturing. And so that will help brands or teams, to see that as an asset, as part to add as part of their digital strategy, and channels that they're thinking of outside of email and SMS. It's just another opportunity for them to get in front of fans in a different way.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, with my partnership hat on, I would say, I think leading with kind of the network and really looking at it as that kind of performance, leading with performance marketing, but then layering on some of the partnership elements, because that's, there are probably other, I'm guessing, retail networks and things like that that you're competing against in that situation that maybe can't offer some of the more experiential or loyalty or what have you benefits that a partnership could have, particularly on maybe the casino side of the operation, whatever it might be. But yeah, I mean, that's you've got to lead with your strength, and that may be the strength in your particular case. But those two things together might be a very unique kind of selling proposition. So just looking, I don't see any other questions coming in, and I know we're at about the top of the hour here. So I'm going to thank everybody for joining us. Apologize for our little 4-minute gap that we had in the beginning. Glad we got over that. Appreciate your patience. And I really, really want to thank Wahaj for being with us, offering us some really great insights into this area that, it's a challenge for a lot of organizations, but hopefully it's also a great opportunity. And hopefully we've given you some food for thought and some ideas on how to take that opportunity and use it to help grow your partnership revenue. So Wahaj, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and I hope I was just able to impart just a little bit of knowledge and best practice to the audience to take back and run with it. So appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And just a reminder that 2 weeks from today, on March 24th, we're going to have our next Sponsor CX webinar. That's going to be with Sarah Arnold, who is the VP of Corporate Partnerships for the Chicago Stars, the NWSL team in Chicago. And we're going to be talking a lot about women's sports, obviously, but also just, again, partnership sales and revenue generation in general. Sarah's has a great background, been been on the men's side of things, working with the Braves and other areas of Major League Baseball. Now building a very strong franchise here in women's soccer in Chicago. So really looking forward to having her join us. There's a button with a link to register on your screen. So we'd love to have you back with us in 2 weeks for that. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you all for attending. Oh, let me mention one other quick thing. On LinkedIn, we also now have the a group that you can join on LinkedIn through Sponsor CX, where if you do have questions that maybe you think about after you join us for the webinars and want to ask myself or a member of this Sponsor CX team about, again, could be about data, could be about anything else, please join us there and ask questions, and we'll take a look at that and monitor the conversation there as well. So again, thanks everybody for joining. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.